Hi everybody, my name is Caroline Meek and I am here at Epic Clay Studio. If you're watching this video, you probably purchased one of the Acorn take-home kits, and today we're just going to walk you through how to do it. So I've gathered all my materials, mainly the kit that you would have received when you picked all this up, and you've got a work board or just paper towels or newspaper spread out so you don't get your table dirty. I've also just got some paper towels I went and got, and a little bowl with some water in case your clay is feeling too dry or you need to wash your hands off. And then I've got my clay. So I'm just going to start unpacking this and get started. All right. So in the bag, you should have a little half sheet. That's just your Epic at Home form that you'll fill out and bring back to us with your project. This will help us keep track of your stuff and also contact you when it's ready to pick back up. Got that form, some underglazes, a popsicle stick, a fork, and a paintbrush. So we will use these at various times throughout the project. But first, let me show you what I'm going to be making. This little Acorn box, lid comes off and you can put things in there. This glaze, after it's been fired in the kiln, will be food safe, so you can keep candy or any other goodies in there if you want. So at the end, we'll be scratching our name on the bottom. So make sure you remember that step. Very important, so we can match your stuff up and give it to you later on. So here's the Acorn. Let's get started. You're gonna take your ball of clay and just start by smashing it, rolling it, squishing it into a roughly ball-shaped chunk. So today we're gonna be using the pinch pot method, and you'll wanna separate your clay into two pieces, one for the lid and one for the body of Acorn. So I'm just going to pinch off some of the clay here. I want the lid to be a bit smaller than the body. So I would say probably like 1/3 of your clay for the lid and 2/3 of your clay for the body. So that should be about good. Then I'm going to roll each of these into balls again, and we'll start actually shaping the acorn. All right, so you can set the smaller one aside for now, and we'll start with the main part of the acorn. So for the pinch pot method, you're basically just pinching, pushing, pulling the clay into the shape you want to make. So normally I like to start with just pushing my thumb into it to make a hole, since we're going to try to make this hollowed out acorn shape, kind of like a little cup or a bowl. So I've just made a hole there in my clay, and now I can start hollowing it out into the shape of my acorn. So this is completely up to you what your acorn is shaped like. It could be a really tall acorn, it could be a really small, fat acorn. But yeah, this is a time where you get to shape it. If you notice your clay is starting to dry out or have like little cracks around the edges, you can just take your water and spread some on there to just kind of like smooth that out and keep the clay from drying out as you work with it. So don't get too wet, but that's helping me out some. So you want to make sure that you keep kind of an even thickness all around by the time you're done. You don't want any parts to be too thin so that they crack as you're working with it or later when it's firing. So make sure there aren't any super thin places. So just keep pinching until it's the shape that you want. At some point, I'm going to set mine down and make sure that the bottom's pretty flat. And so then you can kind of keep working with it like that. And so you've got yourself a little kind of pinch pot acorn shaped thing now. And here's mine. It's kind of short. It's going to be a pretty short, round little acorn. I'm going to pull the edges up at the top a little bit. But make sure I don't make them too thin. Okay, So it's okay if the pot is a little bit wobbly right now. When it dries, it won't be like that. So as long as it's thick enough to stay together right now, you're perfect. Okay, so we've got the main body of the acorn. We just need to make a lid to match it. Got my slide. And for this one, I'm just going to start squishing it like a pancake size thing until it looks like it's going to fit on my acorn. I'm going to use some water again to keep these edges nice and smooth. And before it gets too thin, I'm going to just use my fingers to pinch a little part up in the middle for the acorn stem. So it's just going to be a little pointed stem on there. Cool. Now my acorn has a little stem. And I'm going to finish pinching it out to the shape of my main acorn. So it's up to you exactly how your lid fits on your acorn. You can make your lid a bit bigger and curve the edges down around, but you don't want to stick it on too hard yet because they're going to dry out separately. So when you bring this back to us, you can have the lid separate on the workboard and just bring this whole thing back to us. So, all right. So I like the lid. I like how it's going. It fits pretty well on here. And if you're done with the shape of your acorn, we can go on to the next step, which is adding texture and then painting with our underglazes. So you have a couple tools here to add texture with. Your paintbrush would make like nice, thin, fine strokes if you wanted to brush along there and create texture or smooth anything out. Your fork has a couple different points that could scratch in, kind of like if you want to carve something on it or anything like that. This can be pressed in on the side to make lines or also smooth things out. So really you can decide if you want to put any markings or carvings on here or just leave it smooth. And same for the top. On my example here, I've scratched a bunch of tiny little markings on here so it looks like the top of one of those big thick acorns, you know. So you could do that if you wanted. For this one, I'm just gonna put a couple markings on here to add some texture. So I'm gonna pause the video while I do this, and you can also pause the video or just keep going, and I'll be back in a little bit. All right, so I've finished smoothing out the edges and adding whatever texture I wanted. And if you are also ready to move on, we shall go on to the underglaze. This is where we're gonna paint on any colors that we want. So here I've got a dark brown, a regular brown, and a black. You might have other colors if you decided to choose different colors here when you picked up your project. I'm gonna use these. And so yeah, the underglaze is a special glaze that can go straight on to the clay while it's still wet. Other glazes, just like normal glaze, has to go on once it's already been like all hard, dried out, and through the kiln one time for the bisque round. So this, however, can go on before all of that. So I'm gonna paint this on with my paintbrush and then let it dry and we'll be done. So you can paint these on basically just as you would paint any object, just brushing it on. I like to get a pretty good, thick, even coat so that the color shows through and doesn't get faded or there aren't patches of brown spots missing. But also, it's an acorn, so it's already brown clay. I'm painting the acorn brown, so in general, it should turn out fine. Also, I'm going to take the lid off while I'm doing this so I can paint the inside of the acorn and the top of it. It's kind of stuck up there. Yeah, make sure your lid doesn't get stuck into your acorn body. Okay. So you can paint everything on your acorn except the bottom and the bottom of the lid. So leave those two unpainted, because otherwise they're going to stick to the table, they're going to stick to the kiln, and it will generally be a messy situation. So, the bottom, if you do get any on the bottom, you can just wipe it off with a paper towel and it'll be fine. I'm going to go with the standard brown for the main part of the acorn and dark brown for the lid. So while you're painting your acorn, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the kiln process. So when you bring your project back to Epic, we're going to do two things with it. First of all, well, we're going to let it dry out. And second of all, we're going to put it into the kiln for something called a bisque. And that is going to heat it up to a pretty high temperature, and it'll come out hard and looking a bit more like a piece of pottery that's been finished. After that, we're going to put a round of clear glaze on it, and that will just help make it all shiny. And then we'll do the final round in the kiln, which is just the regular firing round after it's glazed. And when it comes out of that, it will be hard, shiny, and food safe after the clear glaze. And at that point, we're going to email you and let you know that the project is ready, so you can come pick it up during any of our open studio times. Or if those don't work for you, then you can just arrange another time with us through our email. Yeah, so I'll let you finish up painting the acorn, and that's about it. Once you've done that, you can let your project start drying out and bring it back to us. And I hope you've had a fun time. Let us know if you have any questions, and we'll see you for the next project. Bye.